Good evening. Welcome to this BAFTA Games live stream, live from Creative Assembly. My name is Duygu Cakmak. I'm a senior AI programmer and
I'm Chris Budd, and I'm the engine director here.
we're going to spend the next hour discussing the journey to becoming a programmer. We've joined up with BAFTA Games for this live stream as part of their BAFTA Creative Games program, a network for those currently working in the games industry to have access to BAFTA award-winning talent and nominees. For those who don't know, Creative Assembly is a multiple award-winning AAA studio. We're one of the biggest game studios here in the UK, and we have been in the business for a while. We developed mainly strategy games such as Total War 3 Kingdoms, and we have been repeatedly selected as the best place to work by Games Industry Biz. Currently, we have 650 employees, among which 103 of them are programmers. Today, we will tell you how to become one of them. If you are interested in getting in the games industry and if you don't have any work experience, then trainee positions is a great entry point to start your career. We offer 1-year placements here, and so far all of our trainees have been hired for full-time positions. During that year, you have full access to mentoring opportunities from industry leaders, and we provide a lot of training material to you, such as interesting books. Also, we have developer days or C++ trainings that could help you to improve yourself further. During this time, you will work in a programming team where you will interact daily with your leads or with your senior programmers that would help you understand and improve you further. Also, you will have access to one-to-ones with your leads once in a month. And the goal of these meetings is to discuss your career progression and also discuss or support you with any potential problems you might be encountering. We also have amazing in-studio benefits like massages, ice creams, and breakfasts. So today, we will walk you through the key skills you need to have in order to be hired here. And then we will explain how to put those key skills into your CVs or portfolio or cover letter so that it will increase the chances of you getting selected. And then we will talk about interview process, what steps that you will walk through, and what sort of questions you might be facing. And finally, we will give you some general hints. Let's start with the key skills. The first one is the C++. We develop our games here in our in-game engine that is developed in C++. It's a very large code base with a lot of complicated layers and relations between them. So in order to write efficient, performant and stable code, we need to be able to use the language very effectively. And as a trainee, you will be working here. You will be working with this massive code base. You will develop different systems or different features so that we would like you to have a good understanding of the language. Another positive side of knowing your language really good is to fight the other applicants, because we have a lot of applications and there are like a lot of strong C++ candidates that you will be compared to. In order to develop good games, especially in gameplay or AI, we believe that it is essential for a person to know the game mechanics, how the game mechanics work in that related genre. If you're applying for a job in the game industry, please play their games for a little while. If you don't have their games or if you don't have any enough time, at least open YouTube and start watching in-game videos. That will give you a good understanding of how their games work and how their mechanics work. And it will contribute to two things. First, you will have an understanding whether you like their games or not. And if you like their games, and if you start working in a company that you like their games, because you will be passionate about it, you will improve yourself much better. And second, in the interview process, probably the people who wants to hire you will ask you questions about related to their games, their domain. So if you know their games, then you will understand the questions better, and it will increase your chances to find good solutions to those problems. Here at CA, we develop games, strategy games such as Total War. So if you're planning to apply, please have a look and understand what the Total War is about. Next on the list is the good problem-solving skills. As I probably mentioned earlier, Total War is a very large game that has very complicated game features. The relationship between different systems, such as gameplay, UI, audio, AI, art, is very complicated and requires very well thought out system design. So whether you add a new feature or a system, or you improve the workflow or the performance, you will face interesting, challenging, and possibly unique problems as well. So if you can demonstrate us that you can understand and dissect a problem, that's a massive plus for us. For example, if you are good at coming up with different algorithms to solve some problems, or if you use appropriate data structures for those problems, then it is excellent. We would like you to understand the use cases and to be able to select and justify the use of these data structures and algorithms. We have a question here. Are the trainee positions for a limited amount of time, or do you consider interns? So we have trainee positions for a year. You come here for a year, but then if you want, you apply for a normal position, and until now all of our trainees are selected for the...
we've hired every single trainee that we've had on site so far, so it is a good way in, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, good communication skills then. Here at the studio we have a lot of different teams. And whenever we encounter a problem, or whenever we design a big system, it usually interests different disciplines. So people from different teams comes together and work collaboratively to solve that problem or to design and implement that system. It's a very creative environment. There are artists, designers, and it's very important for a programmer to be able to explain a technical problem to a non-technical person. And on the other hand, it's really important for the programmers to understand what the artists or designers need so that they can implement and improve their systems better. I think you have an example here. You were talking...
Okay, yeah. So there's quite a lot of examples we have where we have many disciplines involved in actually producing a feature. Let's try to think of a good example now. If we take, say, an art feature which may have both gameplay significance, potential things for, say, physics meshes, these things will often involve multiple people working across multiple teams to actually put them together. It's important that you can communicate not only with other programmers to actually make sure that you interface with the things they're writing correctly, but also with the designers and various artists to make sure that we actually produce code which has the right set of requirements for them to produce the content with.
Yeah, so in order to achieve all these smoothly, we expect you to be able to express yourself clearly, both in written and spoken English. Okay, until now we've talked about what skills you need to have. And now we will talk about how you need to structure those skills in your CV so that it will increase the chances of you getting hired. There's an important point here to note that hiring managers go through like hundreds and thousands of CVs for a given position, and they have really limited time.
I think
So
the average is about 20 seconds per person if you look it up online. So it's a very short amount of time to be noticed.
yeah, so someone just takes your CV, looks for 20 seconds, and decides whether it's a good one or not. So it is really important to be precise and to be on to the point to stand out and be noticed among others.
Okay, so there are a number of things. So it's probably important to note that this is somewhat hiring manager dependent, and actually there are a number of different sort of opinions on this sort of stuff. But I'll go through some of the things that annoy me and I find good on CVs. For one thing, you see a lot of CVs that start with a kind of generic paragraph about how great you are at working in teams, but how incredible you are at communication, how you're a friendly person, etc., etc. Or this is not really actually telling us anything about yourself, because no one's actually going to say they're not on a CV, and it's not particularly anything specific about what you require for the job. It's just a kind of minimum bar for working environment. It's also really important that we learn about the work you've done and the things you've worked on in the past. Long lists of hobbies, for instance, where are not particularly relevant. They don't really tell us anything about what you are as a person. Or, I mean, we can talk about them in interviews and things, and we learn about you more by the way you actually talk about them rather than actually on a CV. Same with kind of irrelevant work experience. If you get like half a page of a job you did when you were 18 years old, I don't know, lifeguarding or something, that's actually not relevant to the job you're applying for, then it's just wasted space on the CV, and it doesn't, again, really tell us anything about yourself. If you want to show continuity of employment, you can still put lists of where you're employed, but only go into depth on things that we'd actually be interested in talking to you about. It's also quite important that when you put down things you've worked on, that you are specific and actually talk about some of the stuff that you've made decisions on, the reasons you've picked certain things. Okay.
Yeah, I can give a little example here. For example, if you're an AI programmer and if you're tasked to implement NPC behaviors in a game, then it would be really great if you could write one sentence like, this is what I'm doing, implementing an NPC behavior. And then below that, as a point, you could say, okay, I've looked into these 3 techniques. Like I looked into behavior trees or finite state machines or utility AI system. And then in the next bullet, if you say, among those things, I chose this approach because of some reasons that are interesting and relevant and on to the point. So if you show that to us, that shows us you actually understand the problem and did your research on it and make a good choice. So whenever you encounter a problem, it shows us that you can dive deep and provide good solution.
Yeah, it shows the ability to think about something beyond what you just read online and actually apply it to a context. And also make sure that any of this stuff you mentioned that you do actually know, because we will talk to you about it and we'll ask questions and we expect you to be able to answer them because you obviously worked on it in the past. Another thing that's can take up a lot of space that doesn't actually really show us much is long lists of university module scores. You might be proud of those marks, but universities have such varied curriculums, and the module names and everything don't really tell us much about what you actually worked on or learned. And also learning to pass an exam is somewhat different from actually applying that knowledge. So it's much more significant to us when we read code and examples that you show us. It's also really important to spend time on this. If I could tell you the amount of CVs I've read where they're extremely hard to read, the grammar's extremely bad, it's all misspelled. It's unbelievable, and it doesn't look good, and it's also not very easy for us to read or focus away from the poor spelling over the actual content. So do make an effort and do get other people to check it as well, because it's very easy when you've repeatedly read through something 20 times to miss stuff yourself, but it is worth it in the long run.
There are a couple of things I would like to add here. I personally really like when I see on a CV some bold words around. So if you think some of the words are really important and if you don't want the hiring managers to miss them, and if you put them on bold, in that 20 seconds their eyes will catch those words automatically. So it could be useful if you have some information that you don't want the hiring manager to miss. And another is the count on links one.
Okay.
So a lot of people put links that has like really important information. I mean, links are good, but usually because there's limited time, people in charge, they don't click on the links and go there. So if you think there's like really important information there about you or your work experience, then find a way to put it in the CV. I mean, provide the link again, but find a way to mention it there like quickly.
Yeah, so
Sure.
So some examples of sort of bad things we see on the CVs. I say here's a kind of pointless introduction, as we put it. Highly motivated individual, works well as a team or individually. Excellent communicator, very friendly, enjoys meeting new people. Hardworking, always go the extra mile to get a job done. It's great. It makes you sound amazing, but there is no content there. There's no informational content about how you're going to do the job that you're going to do here. It needs to you need to talk about the things that you've done in the past and stuff like that. This sort of information, although it is quite important that you're obviously a nice person, we will be able to drive in the conversations we have with you in interviews and such. So it's much easier to kind of have a natural conversation there. So I think we've been into this quite a bit depth on the previous slide, but descriptions of previous work. So it's like here, implemented a character control and movement system. That's great, but what decisions did you make when you had to do that? How did those decisions affect the gameplay? How did the algorithms you use affect performance? All these sort of decisions are really useful for us to know, and we can talk about those, and we can learn about the knowledge you know from them. So make sure you be more specific. Use the CV to put this information on, especially when you're starting out your career before you have mountains of this stuff once you've been at a few companies. But like early on, do talk about the work you've done over pretty much anything else. Like it is definitely what we've been most interested in. Which probably brings on to the next point of like incorrect focus for the CV, where you have like in this example a job at a local leisure centre, random swimming qualification, worked as part of a team, half a page of this, etc., etc. It's just it doesn't really show anything towards the stuff you'll be working on here, and it's not really relevant information.
Let's go to the next one. It's the portfolio. So until now you prepared your CV. It's perfect, like super well written. And the next thing you do is to prepare a portfolio. What is important here? I mean, what we check is you can actually code in a good way. So you can provide different samples of code to us. It doesn't really matter whether it is game related or not. And you can put that in GitHub or any other medium so that we can access it and review it. It can also be it can be sort of school projects that you do, but we usually value the actual personal projects way more. I mean, if you're super proud of what you did at the school, you can still put it there. But if not, if you didn't go that extra mile and add this extra amazing thing in that project, yeah, we would prefer if you provide us your personal project. That is much more interesting to us.
And be aware that we do know that a lot of universities will end up having you all do the same project, for instance. So if you show us that and it's like 15 people worked in unison to get the same thing, that's not nearly as valuable as seeing something unique.
Yeah. And we look at different things here. The first thing we do is how well you structure your code. And second, how do you use your C++? For example, we check whether you use templates when it's not necessary, or you understand what is the good separation between implementation and data, or good use of inheritance patterns, or whether you understand what is the difference between ISA and HESA. And then we look how clean you write code. And finally, we look at how good you provide solutions to the problems that you're solving. Then having a Stack Overflow account would be interesting to see from our perspective. If you write some solutions or if you write some questions, it would be interesting for us to see how you approach and how you interact with the fellow coders. So if you don't have any of those, please start now. And just open your first project on GitHub, start submitting stuff, and don't worry about whether you find a bug or problem. Just make another submission, correct it, fix the bug, write your notes. It is really interesting and good for us to see the progress over time, how you solve your problems as well.
Yeah, we learn every day. Like, you never know everything, and the more you work on something, and the longer we work here, the more you realize you just don't know.
Yeah, that's very true. So you have your CV and you have your portfolio. Next thing is the cover letter. It's a little bit of a controversial topic, I must say. Personally, I like cover letters. I find them valuable. Yeah, go on.
Personally, I don't really read them, I will admit. I find that a lot of them are just full of information that, well, a lot of them are far too long, are enormous, and have a very sparse information in them. The CV to me is the most important thing to see, and if I'm filtering candidates, I will almost entirely look at CVs.
So probably my advice would be here then, according to that, is that if you're writing a cover letter, then try to avoid writing something really generic, or try to avoid writing pages and pages. Still, you can expand your projects, for example. Tell us more about them in detail in your cover letter. Or if you think there are other interesting aspects of your career or your education that you think it would be valuable for us to know, then you can put those. But just in case, it's a very good idea to prioritize your CV first, perfect that, and then if you have extra time, then write your cover letter. That be fair, I think, right?
That's fair. It's probably one of the most important takeaways from this is the fact that the hiring managers are all fairly different, and we do look for different things, but the information that you get on the CV is probably the one thing that's almost entirely consistent, I'd say, that amongst most of the people I've spoken to who do hiring.
Yeah. So the next thing is the interview process.
Yeah. Okay, so talk about a little bit about our interview process. Obviously, this will be different studios. So we start with a 15-minute online screening test. It's 15 multiple choice questions about C++. The idea is just to screen out people who don't really know C++ or haven't got to a required standard yet. We have a lot of applicants and a lot of competition, especially for trainee and graduate roles, and this is a good way of filtering out the kind of first set of knowledge. Subsequent to the online test, we do a Skype interview. The Skype interview is normally about half an hour to an hour. We kind of start by going in, talking to you a bit, getting to know some of the things you've worked on. We'll talk about some of the things you've worked on. So if you've got some stuff that you want to talk about, that you've prepared, it's always useful to have that. I mean, we may ask questions that you're not expecting, but being able to guide us back to something that you can really show off will really help you. In that interview as well, we also do a kind of a programming questions test where I'll ask you, or whoever's interviewing you will ask you a bunch of questions to work out how much more, some more in-depth knowledge of C++. Gives us a chance to kind of dig into some more features and actually talk about the language a bit more and find out where you're at with it in a bit more depth. Subsequent to the Skype interview, then we invite everyone on site. We always do on-site interviews here. That's kind of for multiple reasons. It really helps if you can come and see the area and know where you'll eventually be living. It's good to meet us and the team, and and you get yeah, and you can actually see what the studio's like, kind of see our environment. It's really important actually to kind of take away the fact that the interview process is as much about finding out that you want to work somewhere as it is about us assessing how good you will fit our team. Ultimately, you're going to spend a lot of time at work in your life, and it's important that you pick places that you think you'll be happy. In the interview, we start with an hour-long written test here. Let's say test on the kind of more depth of C++. The idea here is to kind of just find out literally how much you know. We actually give that test to everybody from trainee up to senior when we're hiring. It gives us a focus of something to talk about in the initial stages of the interview afterwards as well. It gives you a chance to show off all the stuff you know, and gives us a chance to work out what you think when you don't know things and actually dig into it a bit more. After that, we carry on talking. We'll might go into details on things that you're interested in, or things that you mentioned in your CV that you've worked on or mentioned to us while you happen to be there. That you in there. I've just seen, has someone ever got 100% on the test? No, they haven't actually. There was a myth that goes around the studio that one of our old principal programmers got 110% because he actually pointed out a bug in the test, which he did point out a bug in the test, but he didn't get 100%, unfortunately. So
I didn't know that actually. I thought he got more than 100.
no, that's a myth that has been propagated. You should ask him about it.
I'll next time I see him.
Yeah, so after that, we normally go into problem solving. And then this is going back to something that Duygu said earlier on about domain-specific questions. We tend to focus our questions around the sort of stuff that you'd actually be working on, and we will ask you a kind of open-ended problem. These questions are designed to see how you approach problems, what questions you ask, and what information you feel you need to know to actually answer that question. They're deliberately quite generic, and they do actually actively encourage you to ask for more information in order to solve the problem. We'll look at we analyze the sort of use of how you think about using data structures, how you think about using systems that might interact with a machine, say streaming systems or multi-threading, etc. We will then often change the paradigm of the problem. As you get more comfortable with it, we'll kind of be like, well, actually, what happens if the requirements have changed and we now have to deal with this? What considerations do you need to know? And it's really important that during that you try and think of things in terms of not only just the requirements you have to give, but the effect it might have on performance and other implications to code that might be a client of this code, for instance. I'd say actually one of the best kind of interviews that I ever had was guys. I've seen guys. I was a couple of times actually bring their laptops along. If you've got some code you really want to show us, it gives us something to talk about. It's really good. We can look at your code. We can review it. We can ask questions about how you chose those things, and presumably you obviously thought about this stuff while you're writing it. So actually, it gives you an easy way to show off the what you know and the decisions you make when writing code. It kind of also gives you a good way of showing off how enthusiastic you are about this stuff. It's kind of really also important to do your research on us. There's nothing worse than someone showing up to an interview who hasn't played our games and doesn't know what we make. It's quite it's an easy thing to do. It will give you an idea of the domain as well, and ultimately it's a lot more fun to work on things you've played and actually enjoy playing.
Yeah. The enthusiasm part, that's actually something that really excites me in the interviews, especially if it is like early on roles. Because when you're enthusiastic, when you see someone asks questions, they're curious and they're like eager to learn. I think that's really important. So don't be shy. Just show how much you want to learn and how much you want to improve yourself and how enthusiastic you are.
And don't be frightened of not knowing everything either. Like, If you don't know, feel free to say you don't know. It's much better if you say, I'm sorry, I don't really know this. I think it may be along these lines. Ultimately, when you're here, we'll be looking up stuff quite a lot of the time anyway. So it's much better to know what you don't know.
Yeah, good point. Okay, let's go on to the tips then. So these are some sort of additional tips that we think that would help you, especially to get settled quickly once you get the job. So they might not be things that would be asked on an interview, but it would help you if you get in. When you get in, let's be positive. So when you start in the company, you will work in a team. And there are many people who will submit their code to the same place. So there needs to be some sort of protocol there that would minimize the conflicts that they could encounter. Those systems are called version control systems. And if you have never played with one of them, it would be a good idea to, install one and try to understand what's the workspace, what is submitting, what is resolving conflicts, and so on. That would definitely give you a head start.
Yeah, I suppose one of the other things we actually are ultimately making a professional set of software here as a game, and we use agile software process kind of loosely, and as you learn agile, you learn there's a lot of ways of applying that. It's quite useful to be familiar with it. You'd obviously learn it on site, so it's not essential, but it's something that's nice to understand the sort of meetings we're holding and why we're actually going through a lot of the processes we go through, which sometimes don't seem so obvious at the beginning.
And another point is we do peer code reviews here. So whenever you write your code, when it's ready to submit, you call one of your peers over, or you send it online via a tool, and then you explain what sort of things you did and why. And they comment on them, and they would point some things out so that you can improve them. And the same way, other way around, whenever they complete something, they would call you over so that you would need to read and understand their code very quickly.
There's actually multiple reasons for making people explain their code to you. You actually find it's quite often that people who go through their own code explaining it will find more bugs in their own code than the person reviewing it. I think it's rubber duck debugging.
Rubber duck, yeah.
So I think there was a guy that used to explain all his code every time he was ready to submit it to a plastic duck, because he felt that talking it out loud allowed him to spot problems with it.
We should have CA branded rubber ducks on our desks. Yeah, anyway. So it would be really good if you have some sort of practice of reading other people's code and understanding them. In order to do that, you can go online and find good people, successful people in the business, and look at their GitHubs, for example, and download their code and start reading them. Read them like a book. And that could give you actually two things. First, because you're looking at different code from different people, you learn different approaches. So you understand a bit more better why and how this pattern is used here. Or you understand a bit better why this code doesn't really look as good, and then you start thinking about how I could improve this. And you could, download it and download different libraries and start playing around with them so that you will start reading and understanding other people's code much more easier. And
I think it's important to note, though, that don't take the internet as gospel for everything. There is plenty of bad advice, even on Stack Overflow, from people who've misunderstood problems. And so if you do find yourself thinking this doesn't seem the best way to do it, you might be right. You'll often find yourself actually when you're writing systems that you'll go back and look at it and go, this definitely wasn't the best way of doing it either. So don't be frightened of actually using your own judgment rather than just copying someone else's code, even if they have lots of experience. I guess it's really important. So we develop on Windows here. We use Visual Studios. It's fairly useful to know it. It will it will make things more familiar when you start. Although it's actually a fairly easy tool to use from a lot of things. Although there's a lot of features that are hard to master on it, I guess. I guess the other important thing is to try different areas of game programming. There's a lot of different areas of game programming. You've got things like AI, graphics, UI, gameplay. All of them have subtle kind of differences in terms of, I'll say some less subtle actually, but a lot of kind of differences in the knowledge you need. And they have different styles to them, and I hear people say they love gameplay because they love building the systems and actually playing the games themselves. I hear people who absolutely love graphics because they get really getting down to the nitty gritty of making a graphics card perform really well with this particular algorithm. It really depends on what you like and enjoy yourself. If you try plenty of them, though, it makes you probably much better, much more rounded as an individual, and you'll find out where you actually want to work in future. Oh, that's a good question. Someone's just asked, have you ever interviewed someone for a programming job at CA and thought if they'd just done one thing, they would have gotten the job? And what was it and why? Can you think? I actually genuinely can't think of an answer to this, so I'm not sure why I read it out.
Okay,
let's come back to that. I'll try to remember that one. Okay.
We're done with the slide.
I think so.
Okay. Okay, let's wrap up then.
Yeah.
So be fluent in C++. Know your algorithms, know your data structures, and know their use cases. Focus on technical depths of your project when presenting them in your CV, and make sure you know what is in your CV in detail, because you will be asked. If you can produce a demo to show in-house, it is always useful, as Chris mentioned before. And doing the research on the company to understand both if you want to work there or to ask relevant questions once you're on the interview is good. And finally, show your enthusiasm and eagerness to learn.
Yep. So now we'll answer some questions.
Thank you.
Feel free to actually ask any questions that you'd like to know from us here. I'm more than willing to. Okay. So recommendations for stuff to get familiar with C++ or things helping you with game programming in general, I guess. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, actually there is Shafiq's blog that I encountered the other day. He listed all the really good books and the blogs and people to follow and so on. I forgot to put it on the slides, but we will stick it on the chat.
Yep. So there's also a couple of great books who I'm actually just trying to look up the author of one of them because I can't remember it off the top of my head. So there's these are more about game programming in general, but kind of classic ones, game engine architecture. I think it was either quite recently there's been a new version of it. I've just looked it up now. It's by Jason Gregory. There's a few books that I really like on graphics. I really like the real-time rendering series of books. I'd highly recommend reading any one of those. We also a lot of the Scott Meyer's books.
Scott Meyer's books, yeah.
Effective C++. Sorry, that was it. Took me a bit of time to think about that one. That's pretty. Yeah, they're pretty good books to start with. And any developer blogs. You've got the Microsoft Visual Studio's blog and the C++ development team blogs. You've got their DirectX blogs are all very interesting. There's a lot of people that blog about various stuff. Recommend following them all on Twitter, actually. That's a personal kind of favourite of mine. I follow a lot of the kind of major devs on Twitter, and they often repost loads of stuff. Kind of gives you a quick way of actually almost keeping up to date with all the latest stuff coming out. It's almost like a news aggregator.
In terms of AI books, there's the Game AI Pro series that I really
Yeah,
enjoy reading. They have like different short articles inside, and some of them are like really introductory, and some of them are really advanced. So whichever type of game you're interested in, you can find things inside.
I'm going to answer what the worst interview experience I've ever had and why is. I'd say one of the worst things, and I've actually seen it, I think, 2 or 3 times now. Skype interviews where it's very obvious that the person at the other end is just looking up the answers to questions and playing for time. It really does mean that we are, well, one, it's like saying, I can't trust, you can't trust me. And it genuinely doesn't look very good at all. And it also makes us think, do they really know anything? So, yeah.
I have a worst experience as well.
Go on then.
Oh my God. So we had this Skype interview with this individual, and he just started Skyping us on his phone while walking on the street.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it's like there are cars going around and all. I mean, okay, there might be things happening and you might not be in the best position at that time, but just reschedule maybe. Or go in a cafe and do the interview there. And at one point, he put the phone on the ground so that he can tie his shoelaces. So we were like, ah.
That
Anyway.
actually does remind me of another quite amusing one I had. I had to ask someone to turn a TV off that was loud behind them in the living room, and then they proceeded to argue with their partner about the fact that they had to turn the TV off to have an interview. So make sure that you have space and time to do these things. It will be much less distracting for you and for us in the long run. Good maths knowledge important or not? That's actually a very interesting question. It depends what you're looking at or what you're going to be doing. Some specialties, I would say, have a kind of innate dependency on it. If you're going to be working on lighting or any other kind of a lot of graphic stuff, actually, there's quite a mathsy overhead to that stuff, and you would need it. For some of the more gameplay stuff, it's not necessarily essential. You're gonna need some basic understanding, and it will help you with a lot of things, especially of linear algebra and vector stuff.
It is sort of essential for AI as well, because there are like a lot of mathematical models that you would want to know to implement specific stuff.
But don't worry if maths isn't necessarily your forte. I think I saw an article the other day that suggested that being artistic and having a high ability to learn languages actually helps with programming to some extent more than maths. So don't be put off by not having a expert maths background.
But if you can learn it, it is always useful one way or the other. It would at one point help you in a difficult situation.
That's an interesting one about putting images and on CVs. The images I've seen on CVs are often not actually that clear. You can't guarantee the format we see them in, especially if they go through recruitment agencies and things like that. So actually this one links might be better for that sort of stuff, where you can actually show high resolution images on the web, especially if you want to show off specifics of some rendering algorithm you've written. It's not if we've got a black and white copy of the image in front of us or something along those lines, it's going to be very tricky for us to actually see what you're trying to say. What was the first language you learned? Go on, what was yours?
Probably don't know this. For me, it was Pascal. But it was just because I was at the high school back then, and my sister's partner at that time was a programmer, and he wrote this cool stuff about games, and it got really popular. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool! I really want to do that. And then he gave me a Pascal book, and yeah, that's how I started programming.
Ooh, so I think the first thing is probably something like BASIC. a long time ago. First kind of, I guess, kind of mainstream language from nowadays I learned was Java, but that was more kind of forced upon me by my university at the time. And then I got into C and C++ and have been programming mainly in those ever since, with some more experiments in various things like C# and a bit of Lisp at one point, which was an interesting one.
Cool. What's your favorite thing about working at CA?
Ooh, that's interesting. Probably the people. It's a really good place to work here. We're very friendly compared to some places I've worked. It's a very good atmosphere. Very open and very communicative. We do generally care about our people a lot here and actually make an effort to make sure that everyone is doing stuff they enjoy. We have a lot of fun too. I guess there's a vast array of problems we get to solve every day as well. You're never doing the same thing twice, really. I mean, you might be writing the same system for a month or so, but you're almost certainly going to end up doing something different after that. I don't think any other industry you get the real variety doing games. How about you?
Yeah. I would probably say people as well, but because you said that, I'm not gonna say that. I picked my second favorite thing, which is I really love Total War and solving problems related to Total War, because it's a very complex game and there are like different systems, and in terms of AI especially, you get to solve different problems all the time, so you don't get bored. So yeah, you have a massive search space and you find solutions, and then you implement new features and you find good solutions for AI to play those and so on. So it's like always dynamic and always new challenges, and yeah, you're working with great people that are really positive in the collaborative environment.
I think AI is actually a very interesting point for Total War. It's we have one of the sort of more complicated game models, and thus AI here is probably one of the most interesting places you could do it. I'm sure Duygu agrees.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I've been here for like 4.5 years now, and yeah, it's amazing.
Sorry, just trying to read these questions now. So what is good to know to get into UI and or network multiplayer programming? Oh, they're two quite different things. UI, okay, so I guess you could get to know some of the UI frameworks out there, write some UI for some applications, show off some UI for a game if you've got one. Maybe try actually developing your own framework if you're interested in looking at more underlying how it works. Network programming, that's an interesting one. Get to know network protocols, TCP, IP, and all that lot. The reasons why you might pay UDP over TCP, things like NAT punching, all the sort of network-based technologies that you might use. On top of that, you've got the different styles of multiplayer models, where you've got because the classic replication model that engines like Unreal use and is quite common in a lot of FPS games. More commonly in RTS games, though, we use a synchronized model where we have where you run things in lockstep on each machine. It's important to kind of get to know those two systems and where you would and wouldn't use them and the reasons for them. Maybe try implementing some stuff around that.
Cool.
What do you think your future skills will look like?
Projection question.
I'm not actually sure how to answer that, but most sought after skill in game dev programming. I'd say the most difficult positions to fill seem to be in some of the more specialisms like AI and graphics. They are very sought after in the industry in general. Um, um, yeah, okay. So what kind of technical questions do you more like to be asked in person interviews? That's a pretty easy one to answer. So we tend to try and focus on problems that we actually have to solve here to some extent. It gives us a kind of domain-specific thing. It allows you to then talk about talk around those problems in a domain that actually makes it a bit easier for us to understand and question you on, because we've experienced it before. But the questions will mainly be focused around sort of algorithms you'd pick to apply to certain problems, what data structure you'd need, where you'd use maps versus vectors, the performance characteristics of each of those, how you might sort things. Things like space carving algorithms, when you might use quad trees or octrees, or any of those sort of optimizations, structures. And then I guess implications of the machine and the performance characteristics of it, things like instruction caching, data caches, how that affects decisions you make when you're writing your code, how you'd optimize for memory, trading off between memory and performance on various algorithms, when it's important to think about streaming things through different speeds of memory, taking things right back from disk or up from main memory onto being rested on the graphics card, for instance, or something along those lines. Yeah, how about any more of that?
No, I think that's a really good broad answer.
I've worked a lot more with C# than C++. Would a C# project be alright to be included in the portfolio? I don't mind C# projects. They can still say a lot about the algorithms and things you've used, but do include something C++ as well. We will quiz you on that a lot. So it is definitely worth learning it. Or say definitely, it's almost compulsory. It is compulsory. You have to learn that. It will help. Having learnt one language, picking up new languages is a lot easier the second time around anyway. So and it will be definitely worth your investment, and you'll understand more from looking into a lower level language as well.
But at the same time, C# would be okay. But if you have like HTML projects or CSS projects, that's sort of a bit less relevant. So probably that's not the best idea to include in, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, it's the kind of general rule is to learn for the job you're applying for. So we do actually have some C# programmers here, and they work on Unity on for one of our projects. So for them, ideal. But for Total War, which is what we've mainly been focusing on, talking about here, C++ would be the way. It would also be with we have an Unreal project as well, which is also obviously C++ as well.
I can pick the first question. Have the programmers that currently work at CA come from a range of other technology-based professionals, such as software engineering, or have they always worked in the games industry? So there are people who comes from games industry, but there are other people who are from different industries. For example, this is my first job as a game developer. Before, I used to work in a robotics company, and I would work related to heavy machinery simulation. So it doesn't really matter where you're coming from, as long as you have understanding and you have good, language skills, or you have learned enough about the game industry.
Yeah, we're more than willing to take people from other industries. Ultimately, some have less crossover in terms of specifics, but if you've spent 10 years programming in C++ in any industry, you're likely to be able to do it in games as well.
Mm-hmm. We have 5 minutes remaining.
would it be good to know if you've been in any leadership roles during big or small projects? I must admit, I do see a lot of CVs that say, maybe I should mention this earlier, lead programmer of your uni project. I'm not sure that really says much. If you've been in a leadership role at a company and in a professional environment where you've actually been responsible for someone's career development and the pastoral care of those people, then yes, it's very important to mention that on the CV. You're unlikely to be applying for a trainee role if you have been in that position. Yes, if you have any leadership roles, do mention it, but not university projects, I don't think.
Yeah.
Is there any big difference between programming historical TW compared with Warhammer TW and vice versa? That's interesting. Not really, I don't think, is the kind of simple answer. There's probably the biggest difference is probably more the design teams that develop them have very different dreams and visions, but ultimately they're very similar to actually program and have the code base has a very similar structure, albeit there are some differences now.
Yeah.
Right. I think we may have exhausted the questions we're getting in now. So any other stories that you'd like to tell?
Once upon a time.
Okay. I think we're going to wrap up now. Thank you for watching this BAFTA Games live stream, and watch this space for future Creative Assembly tutorials.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.